We come together this evening to honor one of the giants of the motorsport industry, Andy Granatelli. Driver, sponsor, pitchman. This man helped shape the world of racing as we know it today. From Bonneville to Indy to NASCAR to street performance. This master showman now gets his own Hall of Fame in Auburn, Indiana, courtesy of Kruse International. Join us as other racing legends honor Mr. Indy 500.
You want the public relations answer the truth.
And welcome to a special edition of Motor Mania, coming to you from Kruse Auction Park in Auburn, Indiana. Tonight, we paid tribute to a man that was a race car driver, a race owner, and a promoter extraordinaire. Tonight, it is Mr. Indy 500, Andy Granatelli. Tell me a little about the inspiration that you got about how to honor Andy Granatelli, one of the great men in all of motorsports.
I was in Andy's home one time, and we were out in his car barn, and in his loft, he had probably 2 semi-loads of big boxes. I said, Andy, what's in those boxes? He said, it's my damn memorabilia. I have so many awards, I don't have any place to put them. And I said, why don't we build a museum in Auburn, Indiana, and you can display all of your awards and let the public see it. And I said, we're right on the main highway between Indianapolis Speedway and the Michigan Speedway and the Milwaukee. All the racing fraternity drives up and down the roads. He said, I'll let you build it if you put it right next to 69 so they can see it.
I think he was a real something different. Okay, he didn't want to go along with the regular stuff, just like with the turbo engine and stuff like that. He wanted something different, and he took STP and started advertising cup racing all over the country. It was a southern sport. Okay, and all of a sudden you could go to Washington or Oregon or California, and you knew about racing in the South. You knew about NASCAR racing.
He's probably done more for the Indianapolis Speedway, you know, in the time that he's been there, and he certainly did a lot of advertisements with STP and made probably more than the Speedway did, actually.
Racing has lost people like Andy, you know. It's too bad that he had to leave, you know. I wish he was still around, that he owned STP. I bet it would sure put a boost in open wheel racing if he did, you know.
Do you know what qualifies anyone to have a Hall of Fame? You know what qualifies Andy to have this honor? You have to be old, and he qualifies.
We're going to break ground here in a month or so, and so we're hoping that we can have it done, depending on the weather, a year to a year and 3 months. So maybe next summer and early fall.
Born 1929 in Chicago, Illinois, Andy Granatelli had his hand in virtually every aspect of racing over his long and illustrious career. In 1946, he and his brother Joe built and ran the only successful rocket car in history. Vice chairman of NASCAR in the 1950s, he promoted stock car and drag racing throughout the Midwest, especially landmark events at Soldier Field in downtown Chicago. By the end of that decade, he and his brother had revived the Paxton Supercharger Company, eventually selling it to Studebaker. As chief driver and engineer of Studebaker's small performance division, he took their sleek new Avantis, equipped with Paxton blowers, to the Salt Flats out west and proceeded to set over 300 world land speed records. His association with Studebaker yielded another windfall, a subsidiary called Chemical Compounds, a company which, as its president and CEO, he would rechristen STP after its sole product and create the greatest marketing juggernaut ever to hit motorsports.
In all of my years as publisher and editor of National Speed Sport News, I traveled around the country and I encountered Andy Granatelli when he drove his racing car from Chicago to the Indianapolis Speedway. That set him apart at that time from all others.
Well, he was a good maverick, though. You know, you think Studebaker, excuse me, of course, Studebaker's not around today, but STP, think about STP, that came from Andy Granatelli. The Novi race cars, all resurrected because of Andy Granatelli. Besides that, he was my boss for my first 3 years.
What do you think drove his passion for racing?
Money. No, yeah, that was one of the things. Really, he's just very, very, very competitive. It didn't make any difference if he's shooting marbles. He wants to win. And if he's in racing, then he's going to spend the money. He's going to get the people and the drivers and the crews together to go out and win races.
What do you think that the biggest impact that you had on the world of racing was?
Innovation. Bringing in crowds, people, making people fall in love with racing, making people want to come to the races, putting racing on the map, all types of auto racing, from stock car, Indianapolis car and all. I was the first one to televise auto racing, period. I was the first executive to go on the air with a product on television, the first corporate sponsor, first guy to give out decals on cars, first guy to put decals on drivers' uniforms, all that.
Motor Mania is brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts, home of the professional parts people. By Low Car Performance Products, low car quality, plain and simple. And by Kruse International, home of the world's largest collector car auction. Welcome back to Motor Mania here on the Outdoor Channel. We're at Kruse Auction Park in Auburn, Indiana. Part of the Kruse Auction Park is an incredible museum full of automobiles. Boy, would you think of anything else that Dean Kruse wouldn't put onto the map here in Auburn, Indiana? Let's get back now to an evening with Mr. 500, Andy Granatelli, and friends. Perhaps Andy Granatelli's greatest legacy is his incredible talent for promotion. No other man has arguably done as much to advance awareness of motorsports to the general public, particularly that of an individual brand name characterized by 3 mysterious letters. Scientifically treated petroleum. One thing's for sure, Andy's not telling.
Well, what Andy Granatelli did was revise the art of promotion. Before racing was pretty much announced, and Andy knew how to promote. He knew how to make headlines and get attention, and of course bring people into his racetrack.
He was a show in itself. I mean, you know, with the clown suits that they showed up at the Indianapolis, I mean, they got a lot of attention.
I was looking for Andy, you know, the big trench coat deal. Remember all that with the STP? Yeah, all these advertising stuff. Had that great big coat, looked like he was Superman. He thought he was Superman.
In my eyes, he's the greatest promoter, not for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but of all times, has done more for racing, drawn more people, more publicity, more excitement than anybody in the world, bar none. And I am honored to be a part of it.
After conquering the Salt Flats, Granatelli next set his sights on the mecca of motorsports, the Indianapolis 500. Choosing the path less traveled, Granatelli revived the Novi engine, a brutally handling dual overhead cam supercharged V8 developed before World War II. Bumping the horsepower from 510 to 837, he campaigned this crowd pleaser at the Indy 500 from 1961 to 1965.
We'd come out with the Novi. When Novi would come out of the pits and just pull out onto the track, people would literally give a standing ovation for the car, and it hadn't even gone around the track yet. Just by virtue of the sound of it. It would make the hair on your arm stand up and give you goose pimples when it went by. At any rate, all of that being said, Andy was trying to solicit Parnelli to drive for us. Parnelli said, I can't drive you, but I can have this really great young and upcoming driver that I recommend, Bobby Unser. So we gave Bobby his first ride at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and he showed us his appreciation by crashing the car in the second lap of the race in turn 1. You think that's funny? It wasn't funny. And what do you think his answer to me was? I said, Bobby, you could have gone a little longer. He says, well, at least I didn't wear the engine out.
After the Novi still proved to have handling problems, Granatelli next created possibly the most controversial car in all of racing. Inserting a helicopter turbine engine into an IndyCar chassis, Andy hoped his turbine car would win him his first 500.
And he said, you will drive this car, you know. I didn't realize the car was going to be as great as it was. Everybody accused me of sandbagging, and I still have to face that every once in a while. They didn't give the car any credit for the fact that it was a four-wheel drive car and it handled very well, and I think I showed them because I put it in the first turn. I drove around started the second row outside, 6th, and I put it around the outside of him in the first turn. Came perfect timing coming out of 2, and I went underneath Mario, who was leading the race, in a half a lap, and he gave me the 1 lap sign. And,
With Parnelli Jones behind the wheel, the Howling turbine engine led 197 laps of the 200-lap 1967 Indy 500 before a $6 gear bearing failed. By the next season, USAC would ban the car. But by 1969, Granatelli would sign Mario Andretti as his new driver, and STP would finally have its 500 win. Granatelli was so pleased he beat the 500 Festival Queen to the winner's circle to plant a kiss on Andretti, creating one of the most memorable images in the 500's history. As our tribute to Andy Granatelli continues, Mr. Indy 500 revolutionizes NASCAR. Welcome back to Auburn, Indiana. This is the Kruse Auction Park, and it will be the future home of the Andy Granatelli Museum. Now, this museum has all kinds of Indy 500 memorabilia, but also has some pretty incredible drag racing vehicles as well. Now, let's get back to an evening with Mr. 500, Andy Granatelli. In 1972, Andy Granatelli inked a deal that would forever change the fortunes of NASCAR. Teaming up with Richard Petty, the reigning king of stock car racing, they would form one of the most successful sponsor-racer partnerships in the history of all motorsports. Of course, there were a few crucial details that had to be ironed out first.
We sat down, we argued, and sort of come to a conclusion, okay, he wants us and we want him, and this is how much money he's going to pay. And then we got up to leave, and he said, oh, by the way, the car's going to be red. And I said, no way. My car has always been blue, and it's going to always be blue. And they said, well, let's sit down and talk about it. So I sent my brother and my crew chief on the riverside that night. And me and Andy stayed around and argued over it a little bit while, and we finally said, okay, I'll give a little, you give a little, so it was half and half. So when the car showed up at Daytona, it was half red and half blue, and been that way ever since.
We both won. Richard and I have had the greatest relationship any car owner and driver had in history.
I'm a big race fan, and I thought I knew, but he was the owner of Richard Petty's car the first 8 years that he was in NASCAR, where they won all the races and blew everybody away. It was STP sponsorship, and then I heard about him had the big disagreement in the color of the car, whether it be red or blue, and that's why it was half red and half blue.
When I got back home in a couple of weeks, got this contract, maybe 2 or 3 pages, wasn't that big a deal then. And somewhere down in the line there it said, we'll give you extra $50,000 if you paint the car red. And I said, he's always trying to get at you. You don't get nothing on him. I mean, he comes back another way. Anyhow, I marked it out and sent it back, and I think we was with STP, like they was on the race car for 32, 33 years.
Besides promoting his teams and the races they ran, Granatelli was always a hands-on sponsor, tirelessly pushing his people to deliver the results he desired.
I watched Andy with his drivers and so forth. He always was results-oriented. And that's, of course, the way to be successful. And I learned some lessons from Andy in that connection with my newspaper, National Speed Sport News. So Andy was really always in the headlines when he was around. And it was sort of sad to see him step aside and bow out.
Andy was a very demanding man. He wanted things done right, and if they wasn't, you better look out. He talked to you. But he's a terrific man. He was very good in the marketing division towards racing, so when he did things, he made things happen. And everything that Andy did, you can look back on, and he just did it in a way that's unbelievable. The man demanded certain things, and everything should be done like that, and it was.
Too much advice. Way too much advice, but that's all right. I mean, Andy really loved racing. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gone as far as he did in it.
You will do this, you will do that. And I mean, Andy's a very domineering guy, but he, we always got along great.
An incredible amount of memorabilia, some real history here in Auburn, Indiana, during Evening with Mr. 500 Andy Granatelli. All of these items right here raising money for the Granatelli Museum. Now, the entire thought is to build this part of Indiana, Auburn, Indiana, as a place that is the center of auto racing history, heritage, and museum. And tonight, a lot of money going for some nice lithographs, great signed helmets. It's a very unique, one-of-a-kind items that Dean Kruse and his entire crew here at Kruse Auction have brought together. Drivers from the Indianapolis 500, Richard Petty, and a number of dignitaries have all put these items forward to see if they can raise and start kind of kicking off the fundraising process for the Granatelli Museum. When we return with our tribute to Andy Granatelli, the man himself takes center stage. Motor Mania is brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts, home of the professional parts people. By United Specialties, home of the trendsetter. And by Dixie Chopper, the world's fastest lawnmower.
They called him Mr. 500, and he still is. Here's Andy Granatelli.
My heart is filled with emotions tonight. I'm very honored, not only for the museum, but to have such great friends and family. You know, I sat there tonight and I said to myself, which of my two drivers who are not here tonight that I would wish would have here? And one is Mario, and he's in Europe, or he'd be here. I got him to buy an ad to the program, so don't worry about that. And the other is Jim Rathman, and Jim this morning had a very serious health problem, and he couldn't come the last minute, but he would have been here. And the main thing that I can look back at and say that I've never had an association with anybody, especially my drivers, that didn't grow and grow and grow through the years. That's reflected by who's here tonight. In other words, all of you guys come here, I really and truly appreciate you coming. I mean, I want you to know, it means a lot to me. I'm sorry. Am I happy about having a museum in my honor? Yes, you're damn right I'm happy, because if I was dead, I couldn't be happy. So I'm very happy to have a museum while I'm still alive. And talking about that, nobody can do all the things I've done by himself. If it wasn't for my wife, Dolly, my brother Joe was deceased, and my brother Vince was here tonight, and my two sons, I couldn't have accomplished half of what I accomplished. They were there for me day and night, always there behind me, working their hearts out while I took all the fame and glory, you understand? But naturally, I was pretty good, or I wouldn't have got with her. No, all joking aside, my family is very responsible, as all the people in this room. And thank you, fans, for coming from far away. I've got people coming here all the way from California. You know, and I know that the trip was expensive for you, and I really appreciate that. I really do. Anyway, I just want you to know that I love you all, and it's a great evening for me. I'm pleased that you're all here. I'm thrilled. I'm happy. What the hell else do you want from me? Pardon me? Yeah. Okay, we have to get an auction going here. Yes, you must be some work because you're not crying. Anyway, I have to say one thing about Bobby Youngster. He passed 13 cars on the first lap. Okay, he wanted to win the race in 3 laps. Anyway, after I got him all broken into driving and got him all set to go and showed him how to drive and took all the cars, crashed all the cars, he showed me his appreciation by winning for somebody else. Bobby, I'll always love you, okay? You may be ugly, but you're beautiful. No, Bobby. The youngsters and the Granatellis and the Joneses and the Pettys and all of you guys are all just part of the Granatelli family. You know you are, okay? And the fact that we love and respect each other now more than we did when you drove for me, understand, shows that there is something good about what happened between us all. It all worked out for the very best, okay? I don't have anybody that I don't like who I raced with her, and I don't believe they don't like me. A lot of guys were jealous of me. Yes, you're damn right they were. But they learned a lot, okay? They learned a lot. And I want to wind up saying one thing before I introduce Dean Kruse. In this world, you can do what you want to do and be what you want to be. There's no question about that. At any time in your life, no matter where you are or who you are, all you need to do is have the desire to do it. And you have to have a positive mental attitude. And then you have to put out the extra effort to make it happen. You got to forget about bowling and girls or boys and everything. You got to do your job. You got to make it happen. You do that, it happens, okay? And now I'd like to introduce my blood brother here, who is going to sell you a few items tonight. Show your appreciation. Remember that it's tax deductible, okay? It's tax, we need the money. So without your money, we can't build this damn museum, so get moving. Anyway, my good friend, Dean Kruse. Let's give him a big hand. Another innovator.
Just before we start the auction, there were hundreds and hundreds of people who telegraphed us and wrote us and called us that wanted to be here tonight because of conflicts could not. But there's 5 or 6 I want to mention. Truett Cathy, the founder of Chick-fil-A, Michael Douglas, the movie star, Larry Hagman. Here's one other one, Ernie Borgnine. Okay, we're going to have a little auction.
Of course, a little auction to get the ball rolling for the Andy Granatelli Hall of Fame and Museum. Thanks for joining us here on this edition of O'Reilly Auto Parts Motor Mania. We'll see you again next week. Motor Mania is a presentation of Masters Television in association with the Outdoor Channel.